Okay, so we're going to find an exponential function. So they give us information. It says find an exponential function that passes through the points, and they give us 2 points here. This one and this one. Okay, now remember that when they give us a point, that's like giving us x and f of x. Okay, for both of them. Okay, so just keep that in mind. That's what we're going to be doing. And now what we need is the model for an exponential function. Well, the model for an exponential function says f of x equals ab to the x. That's the model that we're using. Okay, so we don't know what a is and we don't know what b is. What we know is x and y, or x and f of x. We know 2 input and output combinations. Okay. So for the first one, I'm going to take -2 and plug it in for x, right there. And then I'm going to take 6 and plug it in for y. And so I'm going to get this equation, or f of x. 6 equals a b to the -2. Now that I can work with a little bit. I can say 6 equals a over b squared. Multiply both sides by b squared. And I get 6 times b squared equals a. Okay, that's good. Hold on to that piece of information. Now we're going to do the same type of thing with this other point that we got. We're going to plug in 2 for x and 1 for f of x. So using the same model, we're going to say 1 equals ab squared. Okay? All right. Well, now because we solved for a back over here, we can substitute this in for a into our other equation. So I'm going to have 1 equals something times b squared. Well, the something, the a, is 6b squared. Okay, so I'm substituting that 6b squared in for just the a. Now we can simplify that and say 1 equals 6b to the 4th. If you divide both sides by 6, you're going to get 1 over 6 equals b to the 4th. And then the way to solve for b is to raise both sides to the 1/4 power. Okay, that's how you're going to get b by itself. And so I'm going to get 1 over 6 to the 1/4 power equals b. Now what I'm going to do, this is kind of like a little tricky to write. That's an exact number. You could write it as the 4th root of 1/6. Or you could write it as 6 to the -1/4. All of those are fine ways to write it. 6 to the 1/4 is equal to, 1/6. Well, now it doesn't look like an exponent. Let me erase that. So 1 over 6 to the 1/4 is equal to 6 to the -1/4, or you could write that as this part as the 4th root of 1 over 6. Like, all of those are different ways to write it. But we don't have to worry too much about that, because what we're going to do is we're going to change this to a decimal. So on our calculator, we can just plug that in. And the way to do that on a calculator, you have to use your parentheses. 1 divided by 6 to the power of 1 divided by 4. That's one way you can put it in. You could use one of these other ways too, but you could try all three and make sure you get the same answer. Now, my calculator is giving me the answer in scientific notation, so I have to make sure I get that in. It's going to be 0.6389, and I'm rounding to, it's approximately, I'm rounding to 4 decimal places because that's what the book says we're going to do, 4 decimal places. Okay, so that's the answer I get. Now, what do I get if I plug that in then to find, I got to find A, so I've got to plug it in for B, right? I just got an approximation for that. Okay, so now we'll find A by saying 6 times 0.6389 squared equals A. So I'm going to plug that into my calculator. 6 times 0.6389 squared, and I'm getting 2.44 492 is approximately what A equals. And now that I know what A and B are, well, I've lost my function, but if you remember, I could scroll up, but f of x is equaling ab to the x. Now, we just solved for A and B, so we need to make sure as we write this that we write it in that form. F of x equals A, which is approximately 2.4492, times B, which is 0.6389 to the power of x. Now, these are rounded off answers. You could use the actual values by writing it, one of these ways that we were talking about up here. The nice thing about this form is it's easy to put in a calculator if you were doing a bunch of calculations. So, okay, there we go.